everybody, and welcome back to my channel, ASP.NET Core Web API Part 3. In the previous video, we created our first project, our first task management project. After that, we create our first controller and first endpoint. And we talk about the HTTP method, HTTP GET, HTTP POST, HTTP PUT, and HTTP DELETE. After that, in the next video, we talk about the controller and routing. We talk about everything about the routing, route parameter, and if we have two HTTP GET, how ASP.NET Core behave with these two. And after that, we talk about how does ASP.NET Core decide which controller we have to choose and which action I have to choose. But in this video, we are gonna to create our first CRUD management web API. We are gonna to use a list because we are not have now any database, any ORM. We will have database in the next video, but in this video we are going to create a CRUD API step by step with the in-memory list. Let's get started. Alright, let's continue with our task management web API. I mean this task controller. We created this task controller in the previous episode. If you don't know what is a controller, what is routing, take a look at the previous video. For now, I don't want to introduce a database. We haven't talked about Entity Framework Core yet. And if we bring a database into the project right now, we are going to have a lot of extra things to deal with. Connection string, DB context, migration, and SQL Server, because you don't have anything about this kind of title. And that's not what today's video is about. Today, I wanted to focus on the API itself. So far now, we are going to keep our data in memory using a simple list. Okay, later we introduce Entity Framework Core. I will introduce SQL database and we will replace this list with a real database. Don't worry, I will cover everything about the ASP.NET Core Web API. So let's start by creating our task model. Let's get started. Now, it's time to create our first project section. I mean, we have to create our task model. Inside the project, I'm gonna to create a new folder and call it models. Here, right click on your project and choose add new folder. And I'm gonna to call it models and press enter. After that, I'm gonna to create a class inside this folder and call it task item. A class, and I'm gonna call it task item. Okay, and the reason I'm intentionally not calling this class task, and the reason is simple. .NET already has a task type, and using the same name can make our code confusing. So I call it task item. That's an important point. Let's define a new property. We need an ID. Here I come here and say, hey, it's of type if and its ID. After that, I need a title, and the type is a string, and I'm gonna to call it title. And we need a description. And we also need to know whether the task is completed or not. So for this reason, we need a boolean, and we call it bool, and I call it is completed. So our model is something like this. Now, nothing completed here. Each task has an ID. Here, the type is int, and we need a title for the task title and a description to describe the task and a completion status. We need to know a task is completed or not. Now, let's create some initial data. So let's get started. It's time to create in-memory data. I'm gonna back to our controller here, and I'm gonna to create a private static list of task items. For this reason, I remove all of them and paste that. Here, you have a list of task items, something like this. And so now we have three tasks. The first one is a learn ASP.NET Core build task API and test the API. This is obviously not how we would build a production application. If we restart the application, this change will be lost because we don't have any database. We don't have any, for example, database that save our data. But that's completely fine for now. We are using a list because we want to focus on something more important. How does a web API actually perform CRUD operations? So let's start with the first one. I mean, read all tasks. Let's get started. the first part, we are gonna to read all tasks. The first operation is read, and we already know which HTTP method we use for reading data. Is HTTP get. HTTP get. Okay. First of all, we have to say the access modifier, and here I say action result. Sorry, action result. And here I'm gonna to say a list. And we are gonna to return a list of task item. Here is my task item. Okay. And so let's create, we have created our first endpoint, and now it's time to run the application and see the output. The task is here, the list of task item we create for some example data. If you run the project, you will see only one endpoint in our Swagger. If you see, this is our get API task, our first API endpoint. And if you want to run it, we have to press try it out and press the execute button. You will see in the output a list of items. The first one is learn ASP.NET Core, build task API, and test the API. Now you are seeing we have a URL say get API task here. And so our API can now return a list of tasks. This is the first part of CRUD, read. But usually we don't only need all tasks. Sometimes we want to get only a specific task. For example, imagine I want to task number 2, build task API. So let's create another get endpoint for getting a special task. Now, sometimes we need to get a special task. In the previous video, we talked about the route parameter. For this reason, I come here and type HTTP get. And inside that, because I want to take a special task, I write here the ID. After that, I say public action result and press tab. And it say, hey, now I want to return only one task item. And the name is get special task. And here I have a variable and the name is task. And I'm using first or default link queue method to find a special task inside our task. Our task is a list of task item. And here I'm saying, hey, return the ID, special task that the ID is equal with the ID that I'm sending in the request URL. For example, the URL is something like this: get API tasks, and the ID, for example, is 2, and it will return me the build task API, the ID number 2. And after that, if the task is equal to null, we return not found, and if we find that, we return the special task. Now, if I run the project, you will see something in the output. Okay. Now, in the next endpoint, I mean this one, I open it and press try it out, and here I have to specify a special ID. For example, I want to take the first task. I type here the 1, and it will take me the task number 1. The ID is 1. It's return me the response body is ID 1, title is ASP.NET Learn ASP.NET Core, and the description and is completed is equal to false. Now it's time to create our first task. Let's do that. It's time to create our first task. Okay, we already know how to read a task, but what if the user create a new task? For that, we use post. HTTP method is HTTP post. I type HTTP post and come here and say public action result and type something like that. Now I wanted to change that. Here the name is create task. I will return a task item. I mean the new created task, and I will take a task model from the user, from the request body, and here I come here because here I have a list of items, and I have to explain you something so important. So the client sent us a task, and we generate a new ID here. Here I will use the max link queue method. The max take the maximum ID from this list. For example, is 3. It plus it with 1, and the new ID is 4. And after that, we add the task that we take from the user to the list. Now we have four tasks in our list. And finally, we return the newly created task. So it's time to test it. For example, I run the project, and you will see, and you will create your new task. Here, if I get all tasks, you will see I have only 3 tasks. Okay. But if I come here, the post is API task. First try it out here. I don't need to, for example, to send an ID for the API. Here I say learn ASP, learn, for example, Docker, and the description is description, and its completed is, for example, false. If I press to execute, you will see in the output the ID is 4, because here in the output, in the code, I say max get the maximum ID and plus it by 1. And now the return ID is 4, and the title is learn Docker, and the description is description, and its completed is false. Okay, and now we get our new test. Notice that the API generated that ID for us, and we didn't send any ID from the client. That's important because the server should be responsible for assigning identifier. And notice the response status, instead of returning 200, it returned 201. It's so important. That's the HTTP status code that tell the client the resource was successfully created. Now let's call the get again, and you will see here you have to come here and type it. And now we have 4 tasks. In the before, at the first part we run the API, and after that we get all tasks. There are only 3 tasks in my list. After that I use the post HTTP method and create a new task, and after that get the task again. Now I have 4 tasks in my list. That was the HTTP post. Now we have learned HTTP get and get a special task, and how to create a new post. Now it's time to update a task. Let's do that. Now it's time to update a task. Now let's say I finished one of my tasks and I wanted to change its status. For example, task number 2 is no longer in progress. It's completed, and we need an update operation. And for this example, we will use HTTP put. I type here HTTP put and paste the method. Here I wanted to explain you. Again, we are first looking for the task. Here we have to find which task I wanted to update. If I find that, I will do some special activity. If I didn't find that, I will return the not found method. And after that I will have to update the data. For example, the user sent me an ID for finding the task and the updated data here. And here I'm saying, hey, for example, it will go. For example, the ID is 2. It come here and task this one and update all of the information with the sending the data the user has sent to us. Okay, and here it say the existing task title is, for example, build task API, but the user sent this, for example, something new. And after that, the description, and in here I want to change only the is completed. For this reason, I change the task status is false, and I want to change it to true. For this reason, I run the program and choose the put method. And here I have to press the try it out and say the ID is 2, and I only want to change it to true. And it's true, but it was false, and I want to change it to true. And if I press the execute, it say the returned HTTP status is 204, no content. This means the update was successfully, but we don't have anything to return in the response body. Let's call the get again and see what happened. Here, did you see that it's completed was false for the task number 2? Now, if I run the again, it's now is true. Sorry, it's true. The task ID was false, but now is true. Okay. So our update operation is working. Now it's time to working with the delete. But before that, I told you if I refresh the, for example, the Chrome and the Swagger, now if you see here, the task number 2 is if I press execute, the task ID number 2 is true because I have changed it. Okay, it's not related to refreshing. It means if I close the Chrome and run the program again, you will see the task number 2 is false. Here I come here, sorry, try it out and execute is false. Did you see what happened when we stop the program? Everything is completely changed and we lose the changed data. Okay, now it's time to talk about the delete. Let's get started. Now it's time to talk about the delete task. We have one operation left, delete. Let's say I no longer need one of these tasks. For example, task number 2. For this reason, the HTTP method is HTTP delete. And I type that and paste the method. I told you, because we are gonna to remove a special task, first of all we have to find that. Here I found that task. If the task was equal to null, I mean I didn't find that, we return not found, I mean 404. But in other words, if I find that, I will remove that from my task and it will return the no content. Here I run the program and you will see everything in the output. Here I have 5 endpoints: get all tasks, create a new task, get a special task, update special task, and delete a task. Here I get all of the tasks. Here I have 3 tasks. I come here and say, hey, remove the task, the task number 2. The ID is 2, and run that and come here. And I want to get all of the tasks again. And now you see I have 2 tasks only because I delete one of that. We have now that's all of that, and we have now implemented all 4 CRUD operation. Now it's time to summarize that. But before that, if you like the video, if the video helped you to understand the CRUD operation, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So it's time to talk about the CRUD review. Here we have find endpoint. The first one get all of the tasks, and the request is get API task. It will return all of the tasks. After that, here we have get API task ID. It will return the special task for us. And here we have post. Here in this API task, we will create a new task to our list. After that, we have put. The put, we use that for updating all of the existing data and change some data. For example, in the video, I update the is completed status from false to true. And the last one is delete. We use it for if we want to, for example, delete a special task. For example, the task is completed and we want to delete that. And the nice thing is that we have already seen all of these HTTP methods in the previous episode. Now we are actually using them to solve a real problem. So here I'm gonna to give you a final test. Let's do one final test from start to finish. I will create a new task. The title will be record ASP.NET Core video. I'll create it. Now I'll get all tasks. The new task is there. Now I will update it and make it as completed. I will call get again, and we can see that the task is now completed. Finally, I will delete it. And one more get request. The task is gone. So we have completed a CRUD workflow: create, read, update, delete, all through HTTP endpoint. Don't forget to create this task and create a new task, get all of the tasks, delete the special task, update the data. Don't forget to do this activity because it's so important. Because if you only know how, for example, HTTP post is for creating a new data, you have to start coding because it's so important. I will see you in the next video. In the next video, we are gonna to work with the database, and after that, we are gonna to create with the ORM. Don't forget to follow. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we are gonna to create task management web API real world example. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.